Hello, Jay.
Right. Well, I can share something from my first album. It's not improvised, but it's one of the ones that I play an awful lot. It's called Calling, and it's for flute and pre-recorded loon sounds. So I do that off
Pre-recorded what?
loon sounds, like
Oh,
the
that's
loon.
very
Yeah,
Canadian.
yeah, it is, and that's what my Flute in the Wild project is all about, and that was kind of the catalyst for the entire project idea, and so that's the one I like to share, and I have some funny anecdotes that go with the having recorded it, and where we recorded, and some funny things that had happened. So how can I share that with you?
Just give us a little sample. Wow, I feel like I'm sitting right beside you on the side of a Canadian marsh listening to your beautiful flute sounds and wow, so welcome Jay and tell us the story of this song.
Okay, so this piece was written by Diane Barry. It was the one piece on the album that was not written expressly for me, but I did do the Toronto premiere of it back in 2017, I believe. And I really loved the piece. And it was on a program where I played a number of other Canadian pieces. And one of the other composers who did write a piece for the event wrote a piece for the second album. And so there's some through lines and ties and what have you. So I really liked the idea of this piece of playing with pre-recorded wild sounds and mimicking the loon sounds. And to that end, I always thought it mimicked and thought it did a very good job. But my family, my husband's family, has a cottage on an island in Georgian Bay. And loons are ubiquitous in Georgian Bay. It's part of the Great Lakes series, and Georgian Bay is sort of like a smaller freshwater, but it's very large. So we have an island there, and that's actually where the composer's mother grew up. So there was a lot
Hmm.
of really lovely tie-ins for the album and the project, which is I called Flute in the Wild. So we recorded this. This was the demo, one of the two demo recordings we did um, to send to granting bodies as part of our application. And so my producer thought it would be fun to actually record it in situ. So we recorded that outside. And so I had to get up really early. I didn't have any coffee, and it was just exquisitely painful for me to play in the midst of, there's mosquitoes going by.
I
It
was
was
gonna
just a
say
whole thing.
mosquitoes.
Yeah, there's a whole thing. It was early enough that like even the mosquitoes hadn't woken up yet. Like they'd been asleep. There was just like this liminal space where I hadn't even had coffee because I didn't want to wake up the rest of the island. Um, and uh, and then so we were playing, and then all of a sudden I see a canoe coming by. Like we had to stop recording because somebody was constructing a new cabin on an island not far, and so we would have to stop recording whenever there were noises. Sometimes there'd be a plane or there'd be a boat going by. The usual challenges with recording outside, and you without an ability to lock the place up. And then I see this canoe going by, and I hear I hear a voice calling out, "See, honey, I told you it was a flute. So apparently, this couple had heard loon calls and the flute, but it was I was playing the loon calls in my ears, and we were just recording me. So I was hearing the loon calls, and they were swore. So they had apparently it had this battle that one said, "No, it's a flute. No, it's a loon. It's a flute. It's a loon." So they got
Oh,
in their canoe to come find out. I kind
wow.
of love
So,
that story.
did you hear any loons that morning?
No, because tragically, 2 years before, because loons, they pair for life, they mate for life, and they occupy a lake, and they'll have chicks. I think once a year, but they stay there. And and unfortunately, we lost our loon. We had actually been involved with it. It had been caught with lines, and it took us two
Huh.
days to try and catch it and try to free it from the fishing line that had caught it. Like, it was swimming by our dock quite a bit, looking like it was really in distress and asking us for help. And so it took us a while to get it. We had like big fancy gloves on and whatever, because their beaks are razor sharp and they are enormous birds.
Huh.
We had no idea. They're huge birds. And so it took us a while to catch it. We freed it, and then we realized that there was a hook stuck in its throat. And we moved heaven and earth. It was a Sunday. We called everybody we could find to find a veterinarian who might be able to help it. And so we got it to the vet. And but meanwhile, there's like storms coming overhead, and we were in a boat racing the storm so that we could get back, because storms on Georgian Bay are really violent. And so we would have been stuck on shore for God knows how long. Sometimes they last for 3 days. So there was a lot of drama. Unfortunately, we met up with the loon, met up with the doctor, but unfortunately didn't survive. And so um, it took until last year. So it was 5 solid years where we didn't have any loons at all in our little bay, in our little lake area. So we didn't hear loons. But last year they came back. We had a new pair take up
Aw.
residence in our area, and so as of last summer, we were hearing a lot of loons. So yeah,
Well, I suppose I'm
a lot
most
of drama.
familiar with loons through the Canadian currency, the loonies, right? Isn't that
Yes.
the dollar coin, I guess?
Yes. Yeah, we call it the loonie, and of course, we have a $2 coin that has double colors, and it's called a toonie.
Okay. Well, I'm not surprised. Thanks for sharing that fascinating and dramatic story. I'm not
Right?
surprised to hear someone questioning whether or not that was a flute or a bird, because there's this commonality in flute sounds and bird sounds, and that we occupy the upper register. And especially on a body of water or a valley, that sound just travels. It can travel so far. One of my first spring breaks in college, I went to Enchanted Rock State Park here in Texas, in Central Texas, and I went way back into the primitive camping area. And naturally, I brought my flute. And one day, the ranger wandered his way over to me, and he said, "Oh, I could hear you playing from like a mile away."
I worry about that on our island because I often will bring my flute and practice, and I practice seriously, like excerpts, and you know how we do, our practicing just like one note at a time, or just like two note combinations, just over and over again, or working the same excerpt or the same bar, or like problematic things. And I do worry a little bit about torturing my neighbors on the islands next door, but so be it.
So that was sort of the beginning of your recording life. Is that right? Tell us more.
Yeah, so as I don't know, I was saying, I didn't really um, think of recording. I didn't even consider it a possibility until uh, a composer friend of mine who also played oboe with me in a number of regional orchestras in Toronto. She said, "Go get a grant, and I'll write you a piece." And my first reaction was, "Who wants to hear that much of me?" I didn't
Oh.
actually believe in myself so much. I was focused on a freelancer orchestral track at the time. And she said, "No, I love your playing. Please, I'll write you a piece. Just go get it." And so I had to come up with a story to apply for the grant, and I had this piece I wanted to do with calling, and I was thinking like other trying to come up with some kind of through line and a theme that I could latch on to, and that's where the flute in the wild came from, um, and with the loon piece. And so I came up with the idea that I would ask composers to write me pieces, Canadian composers, and I asked them to write about their favorite wild space because
Mm.
I it, I didn't I wasn't thinking about uh, um, putting on this album, like what did I want to pair with this? Do I want to do like a flute and bassoon française piece, or what are all the pieces? Because that was originally was going to be one of my ideas, but then as I proceeded through trying to get grants and certain requirements to have them all Canadian, and then I met up with the Canadian Music Centre, and they had a label at the time that put out recordings, and it had to be all Canadian composers, and that all kind of dribbled through my mind. And at the same time, I was talking to a flutist in Europe who was creating a multi-album project looking for different language groups that had pieces for flute around the end of World War II. And for her English language, she picked the UK and the US, but Canada, so I sent her an email, had you thought of maybe looking for some Canadian music? And it hadn't occurred to her that there were Canadian composers. So that kind of solidified my one of the pillars of mine is to amplify Canadian compositional voices. So that's where the whole project came together, and came together really quickly. At that point, I got friends of mine to willing to write me pieces, and they wrote about their favorite wild spaces. It all sort of came together. So that first album has pieces about summertime, which has an Indigenous component with a storyteller telling tales about Indigenous practices during summer. Another composer wrote a piece about where they're from in Newfoundland. The composer that started it all, Betsy Rom, she's written a lot of things. She's actually quite a prolific composer for brass instruments of all things, but also oboe and some flute things. She wrote about um, uh, Bridal Veil Falls, which is in northern Ontario. It's a really famous sort of on Manitoulin Island. It's a very famous place to go, and it's really gorgeous. And so she wrote about that. So that's how that all snowballed. And I took on the persona of the wild flute because I still was working through the idea of who wants to hear me play. So I wanted to play these pieces, but make the scores available so other people can purchase the
Mm.
scores and play these pieces themselves. It wasn't about me or my version of this is the be all and end all. It's just like, here's one version. These composers wrote these things. Please go out and play these things with me and share these things with me. And actually, um, the harpist from Pittsburgh. It's actually the mother of the harpist who played on the album for this Bridal Veil Falls piece. She's actually the principal harpist of the Toronto Symphony. Her mother is the principal harpist of Pittsburgh. She actually took this piece and performed it in Pittsburgh, and it got radio play. And so I'm very proud of that moment of amplifying, because it's fine to have your a new commission have its debut. It's whether or not it gets played a second time. So that's my job, is to get people to play these pieces and have them played around. So that's also why I record them, so that the composers have something that's of professional quality that they can add to um, their portfolio, and thus apply for their own grants or professorships or whatever they want to do. They have a commercial recording that they can take with them. So that's what I do for my flute and compositional community.
Well, I look forward to hearing more of your music. So you're 2 albums in now, is that right?
The second one, I just got my first track today to start evaluating. So the second one is being released in June, and that's kind of why
Okay.
I'm traveling the country and I'm doing the whole train
Okay.
trip, is part of the second Flute in the Wild project.
I recall reading that you'll be traveling to the places that the music was composed. Is that right? And how does improvisation fit into the story?
Well, so I have a band called Aphrodite Unbound, and it was actually the idea of improvisation that came through the starting of this band. that's how I started writing music and composing. I was encouraged to improvise, and I wasn't sure I even knew how to start. And so the first member of my band encouraged me to do that, and then I've since um, had a second percussionist with me, and he's also a songwriter, and so we write together in this improvisational way, and that was kind of really new and exciting for me. And so now together we've been um, improvising with an ecstatic dance group for about a year now. And ecstatic dance is normally there's a journey that you go on with, and the DJs will play music of different styles, and you come up and then you go back down. So this one we do it with live musicians, and we try to do those styles, but it also becomes just whatever styles are on the floor, and we react to the dancers react to us. It's such a vibrant and exciting experience, and so I've been doing a lot of that as well, just playing live for 90 minutes once a month, and in our rehearsals. And so I'm really enjoying that experience. And so just in trying to really bring to life this entire project, I have never been to Western Canada, and so if I'm going to go there, I want to go to where my composers were inspired by. I have a couple of pieces from BC, and I can't quite get there, but there were pieces written about Alberta. Um, uh, Iconic landscapes, and so we're landing in Jasper, and so we're going to find a space in Jasper, which is beautiful in the mountains in Alberta. And having never seen it, we're going to go and improvise and just really express our experience of this space. And we're going to record that and as one of the videos, as an answer to um, um, what the composers experienced from being there. And so there's 3 places I think we'll be able to go to do that.
Phew. I imagine that a train would be a really nice way to get to see some places that you would otherwise never get to be able to see, wild places. I bet you see some
Absolutely.
wildlife along the way as well. Maybe a loon or
Oh, I
two.
hope so. Loons
A
probably not
bald
because
eagle,
they're on
maybe.
lakes. They're on lakes. Yeah, we have a lot of your bald eagles up here in Canada, but there's also the prairies, which is just a long expanse of grass. So hopefully we'll see something. But so I'm crossing Canada on the train as an artist on board for Via Rail, and so I perform 3 times a day on the train for the length of the my trip. Right. So and that
That's so
takes me to
cool.
Jasper, and so part of that is going to be a little bit of improvisatory experience of, what do I see outside the window? I'm going to talk to the people who are listening and ask them, like, how are you feeling? How are you experiencing that? And I'll be playing to that, as well as some of the solo pieces from the album, also just some solo classical, and so it's going to be that kind of mix of what I'll be performing on the train. And then when we debark, I've got a number of musicians already signed up to come with me. I need a few more people to make sure this trip happens. So, because it's actually helping me get there. Because if the excursion includes the train trip to Jasper, and then a bus transfer from Jasper to Calgary, which is about 4 hours, and stops in beautiful spaces along the way, again, where we'll be playing. And I'll be inviting the musicians who come with me to come and jam with me too, right, in these wild spaces. I think it'll be just a really beautiful experience. And then when we get to Calgary, there are 2 guided tours. One of the National Music Center, which is our museum of music
Hmm.
in Canada, and that's going to be very exciting. And then a gallery next door. But then we're going to be playing 2 more places in Calgary. Um, Improvising live. So my band partner is a hand percussionist. He also sings, and so he's going to be doing a lot of hand percussion and sound. And so it's going to be flute and percussion, improvisation, and maybe some vocalizing as well. And whoever else comes with us. So
Wow.
if I don't get everybody to come with me, I'm going to be hitchhiking from Jasper to Calgary. So I need a few more people to come with me. So we all get a bus.
I- I'm trying to imagine who you were 5 years ago and how it's different from now because you said something like years ago, maybe 5 years ago, 2, 3 years ago, before this all started, you said no improvisation. And now it's a fairly regular part of your professional life. So what's the difference? Or who was the pivotal person or moment?
It was actually the percussionist on the first album. He agreed to. I asked him if he wanted to form a band with me, so I had an idea. When I had gotten back from Chicago, that's the NFA in Chicago in 2021, I was starting to feel some kind of excitement about. I would like wake up at 3 in the morning with some ideas of things I could write, and then I asked him, "Hey, would you like to be in a band with me? I have some ideas." And he said yes, and so we started doing some stuff. And he said, because we had as a duo, we had some composers write some other stuff for us, some contemporary things. We were part of a contemporary chamber ensemble festival, and people were writing for us. And in that process, were some ideas. And actually throughout it sort of started a little bit before then, because throughout the planning the recording, I was figuring out how to market it and how recordings work. I had never done that, and I had hooked up with some branding and marketing people in the music space, and they were actually in the hip hop world. And I was really learning a lot about how they approach sort of guerrilla marketing and promotion, and it's a very different world from classical. But I wanted to see what can I take from that world and bring it into the classical world, so to help us market a little better and do and promote our own ourselves, and not be afraid of promoting ourselves, but also how do we amplify the music that we're doing with social media, with the marketing things. And then in that I learned about some sync licensing things, like what is that, and you have to write your own music. It's like, okay, well, because you have to own the rights to that. So I learned about rights and all that sort of music business side of music. And then I thought, I wonder if I could write my own piece. So I had some ideas, and it was actually my drummer Andy Morris, who was on the first album, who said, "Well, just improvise yourself." I went, and he said, "Well, just give it a try." And so we started, and he gave me some rhythms to start in, and I started improvising, and I realized, hey, this is actually kind of fun. And I realized how much of the training and all of the playing and all the practicing and all the professional stuff I did as an orchestral player and as a just flutist learning pieces, a lot of it embedded in me. And I also do a lot of listening across multiple genres. So I like all kinds of music, and I was able to pull on that personal library that I hadn't actually tapped into before. And it was a delightful surprise to know that I actually had a library in there that I could draw on. So
Mm.
that's what I've been doing. So I've been pulling on that. So less formal than like jazz improvisers who do that with particular keys in mind, and they have the nomenclature. And I wasn't that kind of student in school, so I really go by feel and by sound, and I create melody, and then I remember that melody, and then I build on it, just because of all of the skills that we have from our training, at least my training in university, and the way we learned flute. Some of that was applicable, and some things I actually had to unlearn
Mm.
a little bit of the perfectionism. I had to unlearn worrying about mistakes, and learning that mistakes are just opportunities to take the melody in a different direction. I meant to do that.
We talk
And
about
so
that frequently in improv games. Yeah.
exactly. And what I've realized also is that I love playing with percussion, because I started off life in music in percussion. As a 5-year-old,
Oh.
percussion was a really big part of the school I was learning, and so I react really well. And my new percussionist right now is an extraordinary musician, and he's a melody guy. He's a singer and a songwriter, but also loves percussion, and I can hear melodies in his percussion. He's very expressive, and so he's learned that I really react well when percussion starts adding little bits and pieces. That'll set me off to a rhythmic feel, and then that'll turn into a melodic piece. And so I'm really a collaborator in that regard.
Mm. I chuckled so big when you said that you were a percussionist at 5 years old, because there's a comic. I'll try to remember to post it tomorrow or this week, where I think it's Linus from the Peanuts. He says, "The way I see it, a baby should be issued a drum. Every baby should be issued a drum set upon leaving the hospital." And
That's
because a
funny.
lot, we're just banging on stuff, and I think rhythm. I know that rhythm is a natural part of being human. If we use rhythm to understand speech. It's a very important part of speech. Um, but you're
It's
also
the first
reminded.
thing we feel. the first thing we feel in the
Mm,
womb is our mother's heartbeat and the rush of blood through the waters, all of that, and we feel the walking of the mother in the
mm-hmm.
womb. So it starts with rhythm. And the rhythm is in the bones, and so that's why we have like flute and percussion is the heart of my band, Aphrodite Unbound. Is that juxtaposition of a heartbeat and voice and song.
Mm. I'm also reminded of Victor Wooten's book, The Music Lesson. Have you read it by chance?
Oh, I haven't read it, but I have heard of it and I read a synopsis of it. Yeah.
I read it the year before last, and I just checked it out as an audiobook. I highly recommend it as an audiobook because it's read by the author Victor Wooten, and it has some of his music to accompany the audio track. Anyway, one of the things that I'm remembering from listening to it last night is they were talking about never lose the groove to find a note because the groove is the foundation, right? And they were
Yep.
also talking about 12 elements of music. I don't think I could list all of them now, but most of us classically trained flutists focus just on the notes. But there's also the groove,
Yes.
the rhythm, the tone, the tone color, the um what's some other elements of music that you maybe
I
practiced
get the
in classical
harmonics,
music?
knowing where
Mhm.
the harmony sits, and the development of the melody into longer phrases, but also the little motifs within a melody that can turn into variations. All those pieces play into it.
How did you overcome perfectionism or, like, imposter syndrome?
Okay, those are two things.
2
Those are
separate
two
things, are they?
different
They're pretty
things.
related, right?
Yeah, yeah, in a way, I think. Yeah, I wish I could remember this meme I saw recently about imposter syndrome. It just means that you're just not you're not believing in yourself yet, and so it's a self trust element of self trust, and it's it's how I managed to get over my nerves at doing auditions. Like I don't have performance nerves per se, but I do still get nerves in auditions because it's a lot of hard music in a very short period of time, and perfection is quite expected, and you are being judged because you're applying for a job, right? And it's hard. I find it difficult to let go of that and just make the music and be there and not worry about it. But learning to trust my own abilities just was part of my path of doing the basics and making sure that I, fixed issues and I knew how to do it and just trusting myself in the moment. And so that was a mindset for sure. And in terms of perfection, when I'm improvising, I don't worry about that because I'm not doing Beethoven. I guess I think the pressure of replicating stuff that's on a page with 60 other people and having to do things just so that you don't mess up someone else's entry, like there's a lot of responsibility, perhaps probably self-imposed, but I do take that job seriously when I get to do that. But when I'm in the moment of just expressing and playing, and it's the experience of me putting out energy and getting that back from whoever's listening, like that love exchange is what's most important. And so perfection leaves the building.
Mm. It's about love and connection, not about being perfect.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Because being perfect and you're in your like thinking technical mind, you're not in your expressive um, place. But if you're worried about whether or not you're doing it perfectly, and how you connect to audience is through that expressiveness.
Yeah, speaking of the mind and how it works, there's I'm sure at some point I've seen pictures of brain scans of people's brain just lighting up all over the place when they play music, which they say that music lights up both sides of the brain, all different parts of the brain. But at the same time, I noticed myself thinking, yes, but focusing on playing what's written on the page is more of a left brain activity that's combined with the right brain creative side. But when we're improvising, sure, there's a little bit of logic going on, but we really I like this phrase, we want to surrender to the flow.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's super important. And just letting yourself into the moment and trusting your own training, trusting your ability on the flute at whatever level that is, or whatever instrument you're on. Just allowing yourself to play. I think play is also very important. I see there's someone on here who's a very good friend of mine who's all about play, and she's a delight. And
Welcome,
play
Sarah.
is, I think, is a very, very important part of that kind of expression.
Feel free to come off of mute and contribute to the conversation. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to hear them. I'd be curious to hear more, Jay, about your first couple of experiences performing in ecstatic dance. Um, performing an ecstatic dance. I've played one concert and I guess one and a half concerts that were ecstatic dance, and the first one was great, where I really felt that flow and connection between myself as a flute player being like the voice of the wind and the fast moving notes while I see people's feet moving and see people's hands moving, and it feels like we become, it's almost like one big organism. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I had that experience too, and with us, hey Sarah, with us in the Spark Jam in Toronto, we often will have uh, a number of hand drummers, but we also have like an electric guitar. Sometimes we have a piano. We have some singers, and so there's some electronics involved. Um, and then somebody came once with a melodica, and sometimes we'll have a couple of other woodwind players. There's one guy who's primarily a jazz guy, plays a lot of saxophone, and sometimes brings his flute out, but I think he's a little intimidated because I'm there. It's like, oh, just bring it, just play, it's okay. And sometimes if we have too many people, it gets really loud and kind of complicated, and it's kind of hard to hear. So sometimes it gets a bit muddy, but inevitably we get into a flow, and the key is just really listening, extraordinary listening. And that's actually a skill band and orchestra players have in spades. And I think we don't realize how much of a skill that is because we're listening across the orchestra or across the
mm,
band to what, the trombones are doing. I'm always listening for, the bells or like the trumpets, or the trying to hear the strings or all the way at the front of the stage, to hear so that we can interplay it and meld together. And to take that skill into an improvisatory situation was really valuable, because then I'm going to hear something that somebody's saying that catches my ear. It's like a little motif that they add, like, "Ooh, I kind of like that," and then I figure out what that is, and then I mimic it, and then they hear me do that, and we have a little conversation back and forth, and that delights us, and then I'll do a little bit of um, uh, I'll change it up a little bit. I'll do a little bit of a variation and then hand it back, and then I'll reverse it. And so all of that comes from the training as well, and all of the classical music that we have of theme and variations and changing things, and maybe shifting modes, changing keys but doing the same melody, or flipping the melody upside down, changing the rhythm but keeping the same notes. All of these things are part of all of the music that we have at our disposal, whether it's solo music or, ensemble music. So drawing on all of those experiences really has helped me offer quite a bit to the ensemble in terms of sophisticated shifting, some melodic things. Even though I'm just like a single melody line, I will offer that up, and then I'll also jump into the percussion line, and I'll start doing percussive things with my alto, or I'll do some key clicks, or I'll just if it gets too loud, I'll put the flutes down because nobody can hear me anyway, even though I'm amplified. I'll lay down some alto flute drones just to keep the key center in one place to help people, and then I'll grab a tambourine and start playing, and so that's always a lot of fun to experiment with those things and just keep things moving along, and being part of the flow, and using my skills as a professional musician to keep the flow going, because we understand how music needs to go. We need to keep it going, and if you hear it dying, just constant awareness. That's something that I realize that I actually have from my other world, and I'm bringing that in, and it seems to be working, and I'm really enjoying myself.
Mhm.
I have questions.
Okay.
Did that surprise you, Jay?
Not at all. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, I'm just sitting back enjoying your conversation and eating a late dinner, and then I'm like, yeah, you're come off mute, and I was like, oh man, okay, but I will forgive.
I thought we lost you. What's your question of the minute?
I'm just curious if you had potentially considered, because I heard something about platform improvisation, right? As you're going across Canada, did I hear something about that, or did I misunderstand?
Yeah, so I'm going to be improvising like on board as well. Just when I see things going by, if we're in the prairies, maybe I'll try and express some of that musically. When I play on the platform, I might be playing 3 times a day, and one of those times might be on the platform when we're in station. But also, once I debark the train in Alberta, we're going to be playing in live in wild spaces, and we're going to be improvising there.
Ooh, like caves and things with awesome echo?
I'm hoping to get to the Canmore Caves. That's one of the things that's outside Calgary, but somewhere in Jasper, because Joseph Lai wrote a piece about um, the Jasper fires. And so the first one was a
Hmm.
blaze because we lost a good chunk of Jasper. So I want to go play in that space, and possibly like there's 2 other areas, Malign Canyon and Mount Edith Cavell. These are 2 mountains, and Malign Canyon is still not um, safe for people to go to because it was really quite damaged by the fire. So these are things that moved him, and I want to go see them and experience that and improvise music to those same experiences. So that's what we're going to be doing.
So for somebody who's new to improv then, what benefit would you say that your classical training has given you in terms of like knowing what notes to play and knowing where things fit?
I think initially the way I had approached my training, I found it inhibiting because I was so attached to the notes and so attached to having the score and not knowing what to do. Um, but I have a tendency to like if I feel resistance to something, I dive in there to explore why I'm
Mm.
resistant, just so I can remove that fear. So I'm kind of I'm a little bit weird that way. If it's hard, I'm gonna do it. Um, so
But that's cool advice though, Jay. That's like crush your fears. I love that.
yeah, exactly. If you feel a fear, that's where your potential to learn and to grow lies, right? So if you feel fearful, that's your signpost. Um,
You
so
say all that, and I'm imagining exposure therapy and where
yep.
people are like afraid of spiders, and so they put a spider over. Do you have an example of another thing in your life that you jumped right into because to lean into the resistance? I'm curious.
Oh, I think doing auditions. I think singing. Oh my goodness, my band partner is making me sing, and that's an instrument I have not explored. And I mean, I've
Mm,
sung in choirs, and I can hit a note, but he's such an extraordinary singer and can hear in chords and that kind of thing. And he's been bringing me along, and I'm so resistant. I get quite cross at myself mostly, and it's hard on him because like I get so frustrated, but he's actually got me singing, and there's actually evidence online, and Sarah has heard us sing, and I think I do okay with my singing. I'm
You do
really
wonderfully. You have to be so kind to yourself.
exactly. So because I'm getting into like learning not just choral voice but actually singing in my chest voice and like actually singing using my vocal cords and as flutists, except when we're doing the playing and singing at the same time, we're trying to avoid vocal cord involvement, and so now I have to figure out like what does that feel like how do I actually do that.
mm.
So I've been exploring that, but so that was a bit of fear, but I dove right in. It's like, okay, fine, I will try and I will practice, and so that's another example. And I've actually sung in public, and while I was
Hey.
doing that, I croaked like a frog. I was like, okay, that was fun, but then I kept going because like it is what it is, right? I actually have that on recording. have it on tape. I croaked.
I I loved a couple of minutes ago, Jay, how you were describing and pointing out that all of the training that you've done to be able to play professionally in an orchestra has made it to where you have expert listening ears. And I was thinking about how in improvising, sometimes I say that listening is the most important skill in improvising, but it's like hand in hand with listening and taking action. When we have a
Mhm.
composer writing the music for us, we know what actions to take. But when we're improvising, we have to take those actions. And if we're not in the practice of taking action, it can be very scary, especially if we're an introvert by nature, or especially if we've had anyone talked mean to us in the past and that voice is still taking up residence in our head. I think y'all
Exactly.
saw that one of the first things I recommend the Flutarians do when they join the group is do the Flutarians journey Mad Lib. And one of the
Yes,
names,
I saw that. I
one of
did
the
it.
things you fill out in there. Oh, I haven't read yours yet. So what's
I
your inner
did, yeah.
critic named?
Bitchy Betty. Am I allowed to say that word?
It's fine. Yeah, we're all grown ups here. So one of the things I do is say name your inner critic, because we have to make friends with her. She's there to serve a purpose, and that is to prevent us from embarrassing ourselves. But sometimes, especially when we're in the privacy of our practice room, it's time to say thank you, but not now.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's
exactly. And
the
I
skill
actually, when
classical
I teach
prepare us
my
for.
when I right, exactly. When I teach my students, I have a couple of students. I don't have a lot of time for a large studio, but I do have three right now. When I get them to do scales, I get them, and I actually teach a cadet band too, because my kid is in a cadet band, and so I got finagled into leading that cadet band's a long story. So what I get them when I get them to play scales, I get them to improvise some rhythms. I get them to really loosen up and get to know the notes and go up and down. Just I try not to prescribe, the tongue to, slur to, and like all the rhythm stuff. Like, and playing in time is important, but playing with feeling is far more important. So I get them to play
Mhm.
and actually enjoy um, making noise. I get them play as loud as you can and make it all up, and I get them to and they really loosen up, and then all of a sudden the sound blooms. Right. So being able to let loose of all of the strictures, because there's so many things we have to figure out, where do our fingers go? That's not the right note, and making the right sound. And how do you do all of that? And you get so technical in your head that you lose a little bit of the creativity. I actually just posted a reel today about how that orchestral track kind of I allowed it to take my creativity out of the music making for a while, and I've just been reintegrating that in the last few
Mm.
years with the advent of the recording and the new band, and just learning this whole new way and allowing myself to be creative in the music space rather than I have to practice until my fingers are aching to get this very difficult passage, because it's orchestral music is very difficult, and they're phenomenal musicians and flutists and technicians, but we often run out of time to be creative too, and so I'm kind of grateful for having been plopped onto this journey, because I'm rediscovering my creativity that in a musical sense, because I'm also an artist. You'll see a bunch of art here, that some of it's mine, some of it's
I'm
my
noticing
friends.
the map of Canada back there, but I can't quite
Yeah,
see the
that's
rest.
actually
Pull something for us to see.
so this is actually a scratch off board. So as I cross the country, I'm going to be scratching
Oh,
off like where I meet musicians. So that's coming. So I like to paint for fun. So I have a little painting
cool.
thing. So I did that, and then I designed this scarf because I'm actually a graphic designer. So I
Okay.
designed like a rainbow scarf with some logos on it for a concert that was done. Um, and I do some other painting. I'm mostly a graphic designer, but I painted this and then cut it out and put it on a board.
Oh,
That was
cool.
for a tropical winds concert that we did, and I used these leaves. I used these leaves as part of the graphics for the poster, and that
Jay,
was
what about your flute cloth, your for Flute in the Wild from your first album? Doing that one.
Oh, what? What?
Didn't you have a polishing cloth, a silk cloth?
Yeah. So I didn't design the album cover, but I made a bunch of merchandise, right? So I have a cleaning cloth that's of my
Oh,
that's the album cover of my album. But yeah, so there's lots of these. Hold on, can you see here? These two paintings here of birds. Um, they're by a bassoonist named Nadina Mackie Jackson. She's an international bassoon soloist, and she paints extraordinary things. So I like to support other artists by buying their art as well. And people send me a lot of this is thank you cards and art from other people, and just some love notes from my friends, and so I keep them up there.
cool. Sarah, I'm thinking more about your question from a moment ago about what did you bring from your classical training and how is that incorporated into improvising now? And I'm thinking about this word mimicking or mimicry. And I think that in my life, spending years learning how to play orchestral excerpts, listening to the best flute players in the world, and doing my best to mimic them really accelerated my ability to be expressive when I improvise now because I learned how to do the technical stuff well. And some of that stuff's really hard. And I don't usually play stuff that's hard when I'm improvising. It's like the hard stuff is like the sprinkle on top, maybe 1% of the time or 5% of the time. But the best musicians, no matter what genre, have really great phrasing. They have really big dynamics. They have really clear articulation. So any of that stuff that you practice in the classical box, you can pick and choose and repurpose it as you please from your musical mental library when you improvise. Does that track with your experience too, Jay?
Yes, absolutely. And that was one of the things I had in my mind to answer as well is the amount of technical work that we do on our instruments in this freelance and also preparing recitals, any of that kind of work. Um, we focus on those technical details, and I kind of got locked in there, but being able to use that and that's also the foundation of self-trust, because I know how my instrument works, and I've learned to trust that I know how to make it sound, and how to, if something doesn't come out right, I know how to fix it. It's just really spending a lot of time with my own instrument has given me the tools to then take it into a creative space and express myself. Being able to express an emotion, a reaction, a feeling, because I have all the tools. And so that includes knowing the scales. I don't have to know the names of all the modes and scales, but I know how to execute them, and I can put them in my hand. So start on any note, my hands just automatically do whatever that note needs in that sort of chord. Most of the time. Sometimes you're just not inspired, and that's why I really like the collaborative process. I like playing with a couple of different musicians because I will respond to whatever anybody gives me. Even if I'm really tired, I'll be able to do something with it. But being responsible entirely for an improvisation, depending on the day, I can find that really hard. But get at least two other people with me, and then we inspire each other. So I find the collaborative process also really useful. and um, and the practice, the discipline that you get from the classical way of preparing yourself as a musician also gives you some discipline in the moment of knowing when to pull out, when to play, when not to play. So that's another
Mm.
thing that playing, especially in a large ensemble, is you're not playing the entire time, unless you're even string players get a break sometimes. But as especially as wind and brass soloists, we are accenting, we are bringing sparkle, or sometimes we carry the whole moment and then we hand it off. So it's that handoff. I think that's also really important, especially in this ecstatic dance jamming.
Hmm. You don't, it does, the music doesn't need flute 100% of the time. Rarely.
That's yeah. I mean, yes, yes, that's true. Sorry, because we always need flute for everything. Of course, you need a flute, but but the impact of pulling the flute out of the sound and then bringing it back in at just the right moment makes that flute a little bit more impactful and brings that emotional piece in. And often, if we have vocalists, I will step out and let the vocalist have their moment, and then I'll listen to what they're improvising. And then when I come in, I'll take a piece of that and then expand on it, or I'll just copy it. But sometimes, if I'm feeling that the vocalist needs a little bit more support, then I'll do some kind of harmonic thing underneath and just keep it really simple so that they feel supported. But then we do this back and forth. And so, again, that trade-off is really important, and knowing when to pull out of the sound is something that I'm finding when we have some of our less experienced players that come with us. They do tend to play more, and it tends to muddy the sound, and so people can feel there's like just you don't want to tell people to stop because they're enjoying themselves and they're bringing something to it, so you just back off and let them have their time. But we do run some rehearsals as well, and so we talk about these signals and when to come in and back off. We have some improv games that we play together, which is kind of fun when I can make those.
I was just thinking, hearing, I really loved how you articulated these. It's like layers that form and shift when you're playing with an ensemble with multiple people. And when you were describing listening to a vocalist and how you interact with them, I thought of this game we play sometimes in the online Flutarians improv games called Right Rhythm, Wrong Notes, where you hear someone else play something and then you replicate the rhythm, but you play different notes. We also do a variation on this with Christmas
So that's
tunes
fun.
to abolish the feeling of the fear of playing wrong notes, where we play a Christmas rhythm, Christmas tune, but intentionally with wrong notes, because the rhythm is so important that we could still guess the tune, even if the notes are totally dissonant. But one of the best ways to support a vocalist or another soloist is to call back the rhythm to them, but play something that's simple and supportive as far as the chord tones. It's not a big moving melody. It's just a little bit of, oh, I heard you.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
it's a
Yeah,
musical conversation, and
exactly.
with the different maturity levels of the musicians that we're with, sometimes it's like being in a conversation with people who are all different age levels. I mean, haven't you ever been with a toddler who what's the word, monopolizes the conversation for a few minutes, right?
Every day.
Every day. Sarah is also a musician and works with some of our youngest in the world, and yeah, she has extraordinary patience.
They're great. I just get down right down to their level. It's so much fun. I have one
Yeah.
more question for you. Is that okay? I'm wondering how you feel that improvisation has benefited you as a classical musician.
Oh, yeah. So that's built
Great
up
question.
again more of my self trust. Um, I when I and I'm noticing this because I haven't been playing in a lot of orchestras recently, but I am doing one show at the end of the month, and I'm bringing a lot more of myself into the phrasing of these pieces. We're doing like Sibelius, for example, and there's a little bit of a solo, and I'm really I feel a lot more confident like bringing some of my own flavor to the phrasing, but still maintaining the style of the Sibelius. But I'm not afraid to just give it a bit of a spin because they can just say yes, but let's not do that so much, and so there's no fear in there. Um, and I'm also hearing chords a little bit more because that's something I've been practicing a lot more. Just hearing what people are bringing to me when they play chorded instruments, like there's piano and guitar, and these people are bringing this stuff. So I've been trying to improve my own ear in the world of harmony because it's easy to get away with not bothering with that as a single line instrument. So I've been more aware of the harmonic shifts and I've always been aware, like what part of the chord I'm in, and we just naturally shift in an orchestral setting to, like, different thirds and the fifths, and like where you sit in the chord, just as a natural, professional approach to tuning. But I'm more aware of what else is going on around me, which is kind of fun. So I can hear lower voices a lot better than I used to.
Mm. I used to not be able to hear the bass or the tuba hardly at all, but
Right,
as I've matured,
right,
it's like, "Oh, that's what's going on. That's how it might fit with what I'm doing." Yeah.
It wasn't
exactly.
indigestion, Vic. It was not indigestion. That was the tuba.
The tubist. Um, it this makes me think of maybe one last type of or last couple of questions. Jay, would you say that improvisation, or at least the work that you've been doing in the past couple of years, has really helped you find your unique flute voice?
I, yes, and here's another to answer your when have you stepped into fear? And this
Mm.
relates both to improvisation and to my new project. One of my composers said, "Why don't you write a piece for your album?" Like, oh, I've
How's that gonna
never
ring?
composed a piece, and so I said, "Why not? How hard could it be?" So I decided to write a piece because I've been using a looper and some effects and some very basics, and not a lot of people are doing that yet. I wanted to write a piece that used very basic elements of pedals and effects, and so that they could learn it themselves. And so a little bit more avant-garde piece for atmospherics, but I have um, four movements, and it's all using my looper and some other electronic effects to create these elemental ideas. And so I'm choosing landscapes, and so I've got um, uh, one called breeze, and one called smoke, that's kind of like the fire, so air and fire. One called rain, that's more about sort of the Pacific coast. And I have some again with a bird call, so I mimic some bird calls, and I have put those on a looper, and then I play to that. And then I have one called horizon, which is kind of like the earth. But in each one of those movements, there are sections where the musician is to improvise. So I've baked that into the score and into the piece. And my producer is creating some bed tracks to go along with it, but it can be played with that or without. But anybody taking these scores are encouraged to add some natural sounds to it and add that to the piece. So just go get some field recordings that are of wind or water, or trees, and trees waving in the wind, or just animal sounds, anything, um, anything that makes sound of the natural world. They'll be encouraged to add that to their particular performance. So every iteration is going to be really particular to that musician. So, so yes. So improvisation has brought that into this new project.
That's exciting. So it's composed and also with improvisation baked in. I was wondering, is there some music that we could find online that of yours that already incorporates some improvisation, or is that to
Um,
be revealed in the future?
Not commercially released, but I do post a lot of the things that I capture, either when I'm playing festivals with my band, or those spark those improvisation journeys, like the ecstatic dance. There's a lot of those posted, and they have audio, and so you'll hear the flute.
Great.
Everything in there is improvised. So that's all on my Instagrams. I've posted some on TikTok, and I put it on Facebook, so it's everywhere you can find. And I do have a YouTube channel, and there are some elements of my own music that I wrote, and I usually write in an improvisatory way. Like, I'll just improvise what's going on, and I'll pick some motifs that I really appreciate. But how I write this music is improvised. And I did do a year ago. I had a full concert with three of my pieces on there, and they involve some improvisation in the dance element. So we have some, ethereal or laments that begin, and that are prescribed. But when we get to the dance bit, my drummer will improvise something, and then I will improvise along with it. I have just basic chords, so that's all on YouTube.
All right. Well, I look forward to not only listening to those, but sharing those with the Flutarians as some examples of where this could go in our various communities as well. I think that music and dance, one of the reasons they're so good and that I want more people doing them is because they bring us together. And, in this modern world, a lot of us are just, on the computer all the time, not around real people. And um, when we make music together and when we dance together, we literally sync up our heartbeats and our footsteps, and it's good for us. Don't you agree?
Absolutely. That's the one thing. I was brought out again by my drummer, who brought me out to one of these things just at the last minute, and they invited me to bring my flutes out. I hadn't done that before. I just found so much joy in that, communing with the dancers and communing with the movement and with my other musicians, and that full circle experience was really um, soul satisfying, and it fed me in ways that I hadn't experienced before. So I really, really enjoy the experience. So it's a big part um, of resetting my nervous system, every time I get to do it.
Mm. Welcome, Edgar, by the way. Did you have any question you want to ask before we wrap things up?
You're muted if you had a question. Don't forget to unmute.
Well, Jay, I will make sure to post the link to your great Canadian train adventure if y'all want to support her. She's still looking for some participants, still looking for some donations. Donations will go to not only the train trip, but also to recordings. So very exciting. For those of you who are tuning in for the replay, you should know that the Flutarian School, we do improv games right now 4 times a week. We get together, play games that practice the little chunks of techniques for improving our improvising so that we can stack them together and make some beautiful music. And also, I do every month a introductions contest, and whoever gets the most likes wins a free duet lesson session with me. Right now, it is funny flute face. So I don't know about you, Jay, but sometimes I look at my recordings and I'm like, it stops on a freeze frame. And I'm like, what was I thinking right then? Because it's just like a funny flute face. So whoever gets the most likes wins. And it also helps us build awareness of, well, what faces are we making? And awareness to maybe avoid a sour face when we play what we think is a wrong note, right? We don't want to give it away. Anything else you'd like to share about your upcoming months or years plans?
Yeah, so the second album is going to be released in June, and this in that's what this trip is all about. I'm going to have a music day in Calgary, so anybody who can join me on the 27th, whether they're in folk or classical, I want to invite anyone to join me there. Whether they can come on the trip, at least join me in Calgary to celebrate music making. And then I'll be playing festivals this summer in Ontario with my band, and then working on, I guess, the third one, because Canada is a large place. I'm not going to run out of inspiration anytime soon.
Great. Well, if you have your flute with you, I would be happy to play a short improvisation with you. I could just support you with a little bit of A's and G's. We should make sure we turn on the they call it high fidelity audio here in school. Would you be open to that?
Right. Sure. There's a lot of sound coming from my. I don't know if my headphones will be good for that. There's a lot of sound in the house because my kids are watching TV right now. So
Well,
we'll
it doesn't have
see.
to be perfect.
Yeah.
Do you see it in
So
the
high
settings?
audio. There we go. Yeah.
There it is. Okay, so let's just improvise
Oh. All right.
for a minute or two.
All right. I'm gonna surprise you.
You're gonna surprise me, you said?
I need to take my lipstick off.
Okay, this is actually my first time to play flute today, so I get to warm up and tune all at the same time. Would you like to choose a key?
No, just give me a note and I'll find it.
Okay, I'll give you a little bit of A and a little bit of G.
Thank you.
Beautiful alto flute sounds. Well,
Thank
thank
you
you
so
for
much.
playing a little bit of music with me. Thank you for sharing so many details from your story.
Thank you for having me. It's a delight to talk about the adventure of creating recordings and just being more involved in the creative process in music has been really a wonderful adventure that I cannot recommend more highly to anyone, no matter your level, to really get involved in the creative process. It'll unlock a lot of joy for you in your flute playing.
Yeah, I can't agree more. We'll take lots of pictures, make lots of recordings, and I look forward to seeing them.
Thank you so much, Vic. Lovely chatting.
I'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.